Ricardo stood in front of the closet mirror, adjusting his bow tie like a man trying to adjust his own guilt. The tuxedo looked perfect, the shoes polished, the expensive cologne filling the room, but inside he was a mess. It was that heavy feeling you get when you know you're about to do something wrong, but you keep going anyway. And he kept going. Across the hotel suite, his mistress, Livia, finished her makeup. She stepped into the doorway wearing a red dress so tight it looked painted on. She smiled, posed with one hand on her hip, and asked, "Baby, don't I look perfect?" Ricardo swallowed hard. Perfect wasn't the word. She was too flashy, too loud, too eager to be noticed. And deep down he knew, if his wife were there, she would have been hurt just by looking at this scene. But he forced a weak smile. "Yeah, you look good. Good." That was all he could say without sounding cruel. The truth was, he already regretted letting Livia push him into bringing her to this elite business gala. She had spent weeks insisting he needed a woman who matched his status, not someone simple like Helena, his wife. As they stepped into the elevator, his phone buzzed. It was Helena. Ricardo closed his eyes before answering. His thumb hesitated over the green button. He almost didn't pick up. Almost. But he did. "Hi, Helena." Her voice came through calm, but that dangerous kind of calm that makes your stomach twist. "I just heard you confirmed your presence at the association dinner. I thought you said you weren't going." Ricardo felt his gut flip. He had lied. He'd told her the event was cancelled, just so he wouldn't have to bring her. Just because Livia spent months whispering that Helena was too simple, too plain, too boring. "Plans changed last minute," he said, improvising. "I thought it'd be better to go alone. It's work stuff." Silence. A long silence, the kind of silence that destroys any lie. "I see," Helena finally replied. "So you're going alone." Just one sentence, that's all, but Ricardo felt like someone had punched him in the chest. He hung up without looking at his reflection in the elevator mirror. He didn't want to see the weak man he had become. When they reached the elegant hotel lobby, Livia wrapped her arm around his like a trophy on display. "Tonight you'll see how good it feels to have a real woman by your side," she whispered, confident and smug. Ricardo forced a smile, but deep inside, a voice whispered, "You're going to pay for this." And that voice was absolutely right, because in just a little while, his entire world would flip upside down. Helena stayed frozen in the kitchen for a long moment after ending the call. She held the phone in her hand like it weighed 10 kilos. 12 years of marriage had taught her something que nenhuma mulher esquece. O silêncio diz a verdade que a boca tenta esconder. And Ricardo's silence, it screamed. She slowly removed her apron and placed it on the counter. Her heart wasn't beating fast, it was sinking, deep, like a stone dropped in dark water. For months she had felt something wrong. The late nights, the business trips, the sudden distance, the way he avoided her eyes, the way he recoiled from her touch. She wasn't naive, she wasn't blind, but she had hoped, silently, that she was wrong. Helena walked into the bedroom, opened the wardrobe, and stared at her clothes. Everything looked normal, except for one thing, a white garment bag hidden behind winter coats. She pulled it forward, unzipped it, and there it was. The gold dress, the one she bought 2 years earlier for their anniversary dinner, the dinner Ricardo cancelled, saying he had too much work. She never wore it, not even once. She lifted the dress against her body and looked in the mirror. 35 years old, not flashy, not loud, but elegant in a way that didn't need permission. And then her phone buzzed again. It was her best friend, Clara. "Helena, did you see Livia's story?"
She posted a selfie all dressed up saying she's going to a fancy event tonight. Isn't that the same dinner Ricardo used to take you to every year? The room seemed to tilt for a second. Livia, the new assistant he hired 8 months ago, the one who smiled too much, the one who stared too long. Helena breathed deeply. Clara, he lied to me, she whispered. He said the event was cancelled. Silencio do outro lado. Clara knew. She didn't need explanation. She had seen Helena and Ricardo fall in love in college. She was the maid of honor at their wedding. She watched them grow from a young couple with nothing to a respected pair admired by everyone. Helena, you can't let this go, Clara finally said firme. You're his wife. You have every right to be there. Helena felt her heart tightening. But what if they're together? What if everyone sees? I'll look foolish. No, Clara cut her off. A fool is the one who abandons a woman like you. Showing up is not humiliation. It's strength.
Reclaiming your place. Helena looked at the dress again. The gold shimmered softly in the light, like it had been waiting for that moment. A decision settled quietly inside her, strong, cold, unshakable. She would not stay home. She would not cry in silence. She would not be erased from her own life. If Ricardo wanted a comparison, then he would get it, but on equal terms. And he would never forget what he was about to see. Helena laid the gold dress on the bed like it was something sacred. For a long moment, she didn't touch it. She just stared. Not at the fabric, but at the woman reflected in the mirror. A woman tired of being underestimated. A woman tired de engolir lágrimas sozinha. A woman who finally reached her limit. She took a deep breath, wiped the corners of her eyes, and whispered to herself, "No more." She slipped into the dress slowly, almost ritualistically. The fabric hugged her waist, her curves, her posture, not like something borrowed from another world, mas como se tivesse sido feito exatamente para ela. When she zipped it up and turned toward the mirror, she froze. Not from shock, from recognition. There she was. The woman she used to be. The woman she thought tinha perdido. The woman Ricardo nunca enxergou de verdade. Elegant, confident, quietly powerful. She tied her hair into a low, classic bun, letting a few strands soften her face. She added small pearl earrings, the ones Ricardo gave her on their very first wedding anniversary. Ironic, she thought. The same man who once honored her, agora mentia para ela tão facilmente quanto respirava. With each step toward the bathroom mirror, the transformation became clearer. She wasn't just getting ready, she was returning. Returning to si mesma. O próprio valor, a própria força. It wasn't about competir com Lívia. It wasn't even about Ricardo. It was about claiming back the dignity que ela permitiu escorregar entre os dedos por meses. The phone vibrated again, another message from Clara. "I'm here if you need me." Helena smiled softly. She didn't need anyone tonight. Tonight, she was enough. She put on her heels, grabbed her small clutch, and walked toward the front door. But before leaving, she stopped. Her fingers touched the frame of a photo on the hallway table, her and Ricardo, smiling, from years ago. She didn't cry. She didn't tremble. She simply said, "Let's see if you still recognize me." The ride to the hotel felt short, like the world had shrunk to one single moment waiting to happen. Outside, the entrance was lit with grand chandeliers, journalists, photographers, and elegantly dressed guests arriving one after the other. Helena stepped out of the car, and for a second, the cold night air hit her shoulders, giving her a shiver. Not fear, focus. She walked toward the entrance, each step firme, quiet, deadly elegant. But before she reached the door, the security guard raised his hand. "Good evening, ma'am. Invitation, please."
Helena held his gaze. "I don't have the physical invitation," she said calmly. "But my name is Helena Mendez, wife of Ricardo Mendez. He is already inside." The guard checked the list, frowned. "Your name isn't listed." Helena looked down at her wedding ring. She turned the band slowly, then lifted her hand so he could see. "That's because he confirmed only for himself." There was power in her voice, not loud, not aggressive, just undeniable, a presence that couldn't be dismissed. The guard hesitated, but Helena, she didn't. She simply waited. Tall, golden, unshakable. Because tonight, she wasn't the woman being left at home. She was the woman about to make the entire room stop. Ricardo walked into the grand ballroom of the Imperial Hotel like a man carrying a secret he could barely hold upright. The chandeliers shone above him, the marble floor reflected the lights like a mirror, and everything parecia perfeito demais para o tamanho da mentira que ele estava vivendo. Livia strutted beside him, clinging to his arm as if she were entering a red carpet. Heads turned, but not in admiration. Some guests looked confused, others curious, and a few plainly judgmental. Ricardo felt every stare como uma agulha no pescoço. "Relax, baby," Livia whispered, tightening her grip. "They're just surprised you finally stopped hiding me." He froze for half a second. Stopped hiding her? He felt a lump in his throat, but didn't respond. As they walked deeper into the ballroom, elegant couples began approaching, or rather, approaching him with polite nods and forced smiles, and each one asked the same question. "Where's Helena?" The name hit him like a slap every time. His business partner, Cesar, came over with his wife. "Ricardo, good to see you. But where's Helena? We were hoping to talk to her about the hospital fundraiser." Ricardo felt his face heat. "She couldn't come. Last-minute, issue." Cesar lifted his eyebrow. His wife, who adored Helena, simply stared at Livia with a tight smile.
That wasn't a smile at all. Livia stepped forward and held out her hand dramatically. "I'm Livia, Ricardo's executive assistant." The emphasis was unnecessary. Everyone felt it. Cesar's wife shook her hand like she was touching something sharp and uncomfortable. And then, as soon as they walked away, Livia muttered, "Why didn't you introduce me as your girlfriend? You said you would." Ricardo clenched his jaw. "Livia, this is a professional event. So you are ashamed of me?" He hesitated. Just long enough for her to notice. The irritation in her eyes turned into something more dangerous, insecurity. At the dinner table, things got worse. Livia laughed too loudly, drank too quickly, and commented too freely on other women's dresses, husbands, jewelry. "Tudo alto demais. Tudo inconveniente demais." "Oh my God, did you see the neckline on that woman?" she practically shouted, causing 3 tables to turn toward her. "She's obviously trying to compete with me." Ricardo sank lower into his seat. His ears burned. No one was competing. No one queria estar na posição dela. Across the table, Dr. Harold, one of the most respected board members, exchanged a knowing look with his wife. These were people who admired Elena, people who called her elegant, balanced, classy. And here he was, bringing chaos to a place that valued quiet dignity. The night dragged on painfully, like walking on broken glass. Every time Livia spoke, someone cringed. Every time she laughed, someone whispered. And every time someone said Elena, Ricardo felt a hole open deeper in his stomach. Just when he thought the night couldn't get worse, a ripple went through the room. A quiet murmur. A shift in the air. Guests turned toward the entrance, eyes widening.
Cesar tapped Ricardo's shoulder with a trembling hand. "Ricardo, look." Ricardo turned, and the world stopped. There, standing at the entrance, glowing under the chandelier like a star reborn, was Elena. Golden, elegant, unshakable. Her presence didn't just command attention, it silenced the entire ballroom. Every conversation died. Every pair of eyes drifted toward her. Even the music seemed to fade. And Ricardo, he forgot how to breathe. Elena didn't walk into the ballroom. She arrived. There was something almost unreal about the way the golden dress caught the light, shimmering softly every time she moved. Conversations froze mid-sentence. Heads turned one by one, like a wave sweeping across the room. Even the waiters stopped for a second, holding trays in midair. Elena paused at the entrance, just long enough for everyone to truly see her. Not the simple wife some assumed she was, not the quiet shadow people barely noticed before, but a woman who carried elegance like a birthright. She stepped forward, slowly, gracefully, as if she belonged there more than anyone else in that room. Dr. Harold nudged his wife. Cesar's eyes widened. Someone whispered, stunned, "Is that Elena?" Another voice answered, "Yes, and she looks breathtaking." Ricardo felt his heart hammering against his ribs. His throat tightened, and for a second, just a single second, he wondered if this was a dream or a punishment sent from the heavens. Livia followed his gaze and stiffened. "Who is that?" she demanded. Her tone sharpened when no one answered. "Ricardo, who is she?" Ricardo's voice barely escaped. "Elena." Livia blinked slowly. "Elena who?" He swallowed. "My wife." The silence around their table was deafening. Livia's face drained of color. She turned toward Elena, eyes darting up and down, comparing every detail, the hair, the posture, the confidence. Her own red dress suddenly felt too loud, too desperate, too manufactured. Meanwhile, Elena walked through the ballroom as if she had mapped every corner. Couples approached her with warm smiles. Old acquaintances reached out to hug her. Some even stepped aside respectfully, giving her space, almost like royalty passing through. "Elena, it's been too long. You look absolutely radiant. We missed you at the last event." Elena responded gently, elegantly, with that poised smile that made every person feel acknowledged. She wasn't putting on a show. She was simply being who she always was. And that was what hurt Ricardo the most. He had forgotten the woman who stood by his side from the beginning, forgotten her value, her dignity, her quiet strength, forgotten the way she could light up a room without even trying. And now, seeing her like this, he realized something brutal. He didn't deserve her presence anymore. As Elena reached closer to their table, Livia instinctively sat up straighter, adjusting her posture, pulling her neckline higher. But nothing she did mattered, because Elena wasn't competing. She was simply existing, and her existence alone was overwhelming. Ricardo couldn't take his eyes off Elena, not out of desire, but out of recognition. Recognition of everything he threw away.
Recognition of every lie he told. Recognition of the magnitude of his betrayal. And Helena? She felt his gaze burning from across the room. But she didn't speed up. She didn't slow down. She just walked, calm, confident, toward the table where both her past and her breaking point waited. By the time she stopped beside the chair that should have been hers from the beginning of the night, the entire ballroom was holding its breath. Ricardo stood up abruptly, almost knocking over his glass. Helena looked at him, and that look alone was enough to tear him apart. Helena stood beside the chair that should have been hers, the soft glow of the chandeliers catching on the gold of her dress. No one at the table moved, no one breathed. It was as if the entire scene had turned into a photograph, perfect, frozen, painfully quiet. Ricardo was the first to react. He stumbled to his feet, his voice cracking. "Helena, you came." She tilted her head slightly, her expression calm, polite, almost too polite. "Of course," she replied, her tone smooth as glass. "Why wouldn't I be here? This event has been part of our lives for 12 years. Every word was gentle. Every word cut deeper than a blade. Cesar and his wife immediately stood up to greet her with the warmth reserved for someone genuinely admired. "Helena, you look stunning tonight," said Cesar's wife. "It's wonderful to see you," Cesar added, shaking her hand with a smile that finally softened the atmosphere, at least for everyone except Ricardo and Livia. Helena thanked them gracefully, then turned toward the empty chair beside Ricardo. "Is this seat taken?" Ricardo's voice nearly failed. No, please, sit." He pulled the chair out for her like a man handling something fragile, something sacred. Helena sat with a quiet elegance that made even her smallest movements look intentional. Livia forced a smile, the kind of smile someone makes when they're drowning and pretending they're not. "Hi," she chirped, extending a stiff hand. "I'm Livia. I work with Ricardo." Helena turned to her slowly, studied her from head to toe, then accepted the handshake with a composure so sharp it could cut stone. "Livia," she repeated softly. "I see." That was it. 2 words. But those 2 words shook Livia more than a scream ever could. Helena then faced Ricardo. Her eyes didn't show anger, just clarity. Clarity he couldn't hide from. "You didn't tell me you hired a new assistant," she said calmly. Ricardo swallowed, hard. "It was recent." Livia jumped in too quickly. "Oh yes, Ricardo said he needed someone modern, someone who could keep up with his lifestyle. I've been helping him with everything." The table fell silent again. Not a comfortable silence, but a silence full of judgment. Helena smiled, but it wasn't a smile of kindness. It was a smile of understanding, the kind that says, "I know exactly what's going on." "How dedicated of you," she said. Livia's confidence flickered like a candle in the wind. Across the table, Dr. Harold cleared his throat. "Helena, my wife and I were just saying how much we missed having you at these events. You always brought such grace." Helena thanked him warmly, as if the compliment meant nothing and everything at the same time. Ricardo sank into his chair, feeling smaller by the second. Every sentence, every glance, every polite greeting reminded him she belonged here. Livia didn't. And he wasn't sure where he belonged anymore. A waiter came by to pour wine. Helena lifted her glass delicately, turning to Ricardo. "To clarity," she said. He paused. "To what?" Her eyes met his, calm, steady. "Clarity," she repeated. "Something we've all been needing lately." The clink of her glass against his sounded louder than anything else in the ballroom. And for the first time that night, Ricardo realized Helena hadn't come to cause a scene. She had come to show the truth. And nothing he had planned, absolutely nothing, could stop what was coming next. Livia felt the air tighten around her like an invisible rope. Every time Helena spoke, even softly, the entire table seemed to lean toward her, not toward the woman sitting in a bright red dress, trying desperately to steal attention. Helena didn't raise her voice. She didn't make a scene. She didn't threaten or accuse. She didn't need to. Her presence alone rearranged the balance of the room.
Ricardo shifted uncomfortably in his seat, wiping his palms against the napkin, as if trying to erase the guilt from his skin. He kept glancing between the two women, the one he chose for the night, and the one he vowed to spend a lifetime with, a vow he had broken in every possible way. The orchestra played softly in the background, but even the music seemed to dim whenever Helena spoke. Livia cleared her throat loudly, desperate to reclaim control. "So, Helena," she said with a strained smile, "Ricardo and I have been working very closely lately. He really relies on me."
Helena turned her head with the slow elegance of a queen acknowledging a servant. Her eyes softened, not with sympathy, but with understanding. "I'm sure he does," she answered smoothly. "People rely on all kinds of things when they're going through phases." Livia blinked, confused. Ricardo nearly choked. The table fell into a hush so deep it was almost holy. Dr. Harold's wife nodded subtly, a satisfied glint in her eye. Livia straightened her posture, cheeks flushing. "Well, I wouldn't call it poor judgment. After all, he brought me here, didn't he?" Helena smiled, a calm, devastating smile. "Yes, he did." She paused. "Which tells us everything we need to know about the phase." Livia froze. The meaning hit her like cold water. Ricardo lowered his head, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Before Livia could regain her footing, Caesar's wife leaned toward Helena with genuine warmth. "Helena, dear, you look absolutely radiant. Did you do something different with your hair?" Helena laughed softly, touching the bun at the back of her head. "Just a simple twist. Sometimes simplicity speaks louder than extravagance." Livia swallowed hard. Everyone knew the comment was aimed at her dress, a dress meant to shock, not impress. Caesar's wife continued, "Honestly, the room brightened when you walked in, and that gown, stunning." Helena thanked her, then added gently, "It's a special piece. I've been saving it for a meaningful night." Ricardo's heart cracked. The dress, he remembered. The anniversary dinner he canceled. The hurt in her eyes that night. The lie he told. Now she wore it, not for him, but for the truth. Livia's hands trembled under the table. She whispered sharply, "Why is everyone acting like she's royalty?" Helena heard it. Everyone heard it. She turned slowly, her gaze calm but sharp. "Because respect," she said softly, "is something you earn long before you walk into a room." Livia's mouth opened, but nothing came out. She was drowning. Helena, meanwhile, didn't need to raise a finger. Her silence was power. Her elegance was force. Her presence was truth. And for the first time since she entered the ballroom, everyone realized the real woman at that table wasn't the one wearing red. It was the one who didn't have to try. Livia could feel it, the slow, creeping humiliation wrapping around her like vines. Every whisper around the table, every stolen glance, every compliment directed at Helena. It wasn't paranoia, it was happening. She grabbed her wine glass, fingers trembling, and took a long sip. Too long. When she set the glass down, it clinked louder than it should have. Trying to regain control, she leaned forward dramatically. "Well, Ricardo and I have been planning a business trip together, Miami, very important meetings." The table fell silent. Ricardo stared at her, horrified. "What?" someone murmured. Livia continued, oblivious to the social grenade she had just thrown. "Well, he said he wants me to meet his international partners, show him he has someone modern at his side." Ricardo felt the blood drain from his face. Helena didn't flinch. She just took a slow sip of her wine and set the glass down with perfect precision. Then she turned her head, just slightly, and looked at Ricardo. There were no tears, no trembling lips, just a calm, terrifying clarity. "Is that so?" she asked softly. Ricardo opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Cesar cleared his throat, visibly uncomfortable.
Dr. Harold's wife stared at Livia like she'd grown horns, and Livia, sensing she had said something wrong, tried to fix it. "Well, he told me you two barely talk these days. I assumed—" Helena cut her off with a gentle raise of her hand. She didn't need to shout. She didn't need to stand. Her voice, calm and steady, had more impact than any outburst could. Assumption is a dangerous thing, Livia. It often reveals more about the person assuming than about the truth. Livia blinked, throat tightening. Helena continued, her tone still polite, still deadly elegant. "But let me clarify one thing. Ricardo and I spoke yesterday. We discussed our upcoming plans for our renewal of vows." The table gasped collectively. Ricardo nearly dropped his fork. Livia stared, stunned. "Renewal of what?" she stuttered. Helena smiled, a soft, devastating smile. "Vows. Marriage vows. 12 years together deserves a proper celebration, don't you think?" The silence that followed was nuclear. Across the room, two women whispered, "Renewing vows? And he brought another woman tonight?" The humiliation hit Livia first. Sharp, cold, suffocating. She looked around and saw the judgment in every pair of eyes watching her. She wasn't the main character. She was the mistake. Desperate, Livia tried again. "Ricardo told me—"
Helena interrupted, this time with surgical precision. "Whatever Ricardo told you, Livia, was meant to justify a fantasy, not reality." Livia's face crumbled. Her lower lip trembled. She clutched the napkin on her lap like it was the last rope holding her together. Dr. Harold leaned toward Helena. "My dear," he said softly, "you handled that with extraordinary grace." Helena nodded politely. Livia, on the other hand, stood abruptly, knocking her knee on the table. I need to go to the restroom." She turned and practically fled the table, her heels clicking violently against the marble floor as whispers spread through the room like wildfire. When she disappeared behind the door, the table finally exhaled. Helena glanced at Ricardo, not with anger, but with truth. The kind of truth that left no place to hide. Ricardo swallowed hard. She wasn't done. Not even close. When Livia disappeared behind the bathroom door, the tension at the table slowly dissolved, leaving behind a heavy, expectant silence. Guests returned to their conversations, but many kept glancing toward Helena and toward Ricardo. Helena placed her napkin down calmly. "Ricardo," she said, her tone steady, "walk with me." Not a request, a decision. Ricardo stood slowly, legs weak, following her toward a quieter hallway beside the ballroom. The music faded behind them until only the distant murmur of voices remained. Helena stopped near a marble pillar, the golden fabric of her dress glowing faintly under the soft lights. She turned to face him fully. For the first time that night, Ricardo felt the full weight of her eyes, clear, direct, and painfully honest. "Why?" she asked simply. No accusation, no dramatic tears. Just a single word heavy enough to break him. Ricardo looked down at the floor. "Helena, I don't know how it happened. I didn't plan to—" "Please," she interrupted, raising one hand. "Don't insult both of us with excuses." Her voice wasn't angry. It was tired. Tired in a way that hurt more than shouting ever could. Ricardo inhaled shakily. "I messed up. I know I did. I've been under pressure." "Pressure doesn't create betrayal, Ricardo," she said quietly. "It reveals who you really are during it." He winced, feeling the truth hit his chest. Helena took a slow breath. "Do you know what hurt the most?" she asked. Ricardo looked up, eyes filling with guilt. It wasn't the lie. It wasn't Livia. It wasn't even this night. She paused. Her voice softened. "It was realizing you didn't see me anymore." Those words crushed him. She continued, "You stopped looking at me. Stopped talking to me. Stopped noticing when I walked into a room. I became invisible to the man who once said I was his whole world." Ricardo felt tears burning the corners of his eyes. "Helena, that's not true."
I love you. I always have. She studied him for a long moment. Love isn't something you say, Ricardo. It's something you show. Her voice cracked, just slightly. The first sign of the emotion she had held back all night. And for months, you showed me nothing. Ricardo stepped closer, desperate. I can change, I swear to you. Tonight, when I saw you walk into that room, I realized how blind I've been. How stupid, how much I threw away. Helena blinked, but no tears fell. Realizing something isn't the same as repairing it. He swallowed hard. Then tell me how. Tell me what to do. Helena shook her head gently. I'm not here to guide you anymore. That's something you will have to figure out on your own. She turned slightly, giving him a view of her side profile. Strong, elegant, unbreakable. But understand this, Ricardo. She looked back at him, and her voice carried a gravity that shook him to the core. After tonight, nothing will go back to the way it was. You chose this path. You chose this humiliation. You chose this distance. Ricardo's voice broke. Are you leaving me? Helena's expression softened, not with forgiveness, but with dignity. I'm not making any decisions tonight. Emotions are loud, and loud emotions are dangerous. She stepped closer, and for a moment he thought she might hold his hand, but she didn't. What I am doing is giving you space to become the man you forgot how to be. Her words were a mirror, sharp, honest, unavoidable. Ricardo nodded slowly, defeated. And what about us? Helena looked at him with a clarity that left him breathless. We'll see if there's an us to rebuild. Behind them, the ballroom lights shimmered, and in that quiet hallway, Ricardo realized the unbearable truth. Livia was a mistake, but losing Helena would be a tragedy. When Ricardo returned to the ballroom, he looked like a man walking through the ruins of his own choices. Livia never came back from the restroom. People murmured that she had left in tears, and no one bothered to follow her. But Helena? Helena walked back in with the same quiet dignity she entered with.
Didn't wait for him. She didn't look for him. She simply returned to her place in the world. A world that had always respected her more than he did. For the rest of the night, Ricardo watched her from a distance. The way guests leaned toward her when she spoke. The way people smiled when she passed. The way her presence commanded the very air around her. And he realized, painfully, that the only person who never appreciated Helena was him. When the event ended, she didn't wait for him outside. She called a car, thanked the chauffeurs, and left with a soft wave to the staff that adored her. Ricardo stood frozen at the exit, watching her car taillights disappear into the night. It felt like watching his future slip away. The next weeks were the hardest of his life. Helena didn't yell. She didn't pack bags. She didn't slam doors. She did something far more terrifying. She became distant, cold, quiet, independent. Ricardo started therapy, stopped drinking, stopped lying, stopped everything that made him drift away in the first place. He sent messages she didn't answer, wrote letters she didn't read, stopped by the house only to leave flowers and leave quietly. He lost weight, lost sleep, lost the confidence he once wore like armor. Meanwhile, Helena blossomed. She took on new projects, started a charity initiative with her friends, gained even more respect in the community. People would stop her and say, "We're so glad to see you shining again." And she would answer with a small, graceful smile. One afternoon, months later, Ricardo found a small envelope taped to his apartment door. His heart pounded. It was her handwriting. Inside, just one sentence. Meet me where it all began. He knew exactly where. He drove straight to the small lakeside park where he had proposed to her 12 years earlier. The same bench, the same trees, the same sound of water hitting the rocks. Helena was already there, standing with the sunset behind her, gold light glowing around her like a halo. He approached slowly. "Helena," he whispered. She didn't turn immediately. She let him stand there, in the silence he had earned. Then she spoke. "I needed to see if you would come." He swallowed. "I'd come anywhere for you." She finally faced him. Her eyes weren't angry. They weren't wounded. They were clear. "I watched you from far away these months," she said. "And for the first time in a long time, you grew." He felt his throat tighten. "I only grew because I lost you." Helena shook her head gently. "No, Ricardo. You grew because you were forced to face yourself." The truth landed deep. She stepped closer, too close for him to pretend this moment wasn't real. "I'm not promising things will be like before. I'm not promising I trust you yet. Trust isn't given. It's rebuilt." He nodded, tears burning his eyes. "I'll spend the rest of my life rebuilding it." Then, Helena did something that shattered him completely. She reached out and took his hand. Not as a wife, not as a lover, but as someone willing to begin again. "One step at a time, Ricardo." His voice broke. "Does this mean we still have a chance?" She looked into his eyes, really looked. And with the same elegance that silenced an entire ballroom months antes, ela respondeu. "You have a chance to prove it. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation. A chance."